Hi, I'm John Hamilton. I'm here from Christ Church, and this is the final talk in our series on financial wisdom. And I really love this series because I feel like we're giving advice and insight that has the capacity, the potential to change, not only to transform your finances, but your family, your life, your family's life, and the community around you. And so these principles are really amazing. It's finding the perspective on how to view your life, your finances, and every other part of your life. The perspective, the understanding the four basic uses of money, and then having the simple, wise principles that develop into habits in your life. And it's really powerful. It's really transformational. And so we started off talking about what is the number one perspective that we need to have. And I chose in my life, together with my wife, and I invite you to choose as well, the biblical perspective that God is a creator. He owns it all. God owns it all. We looked at the verse briefly, Psalm 24:1, just as a reference verse of what is taught throughout all of the Bible, throughout all of Scripture. God owns it all. He is our provider. And so we talked about God is, the Lord is my shepherd from Psalm 23:1. God is our good shepherd. And then Jesus says He is our good shepherd. And so He's our provider. He's the one that gives us all that we need. And so all that He gives us is what we need. That's trust. And we're trusting in Him that what I have is sufficient. And that's what allows me to be content, because when I believe God is my provider, what I have is enough. His wisdom is sufficient and available, and I'm demonstrating my faith through how I manage my finances. And I can do that because I'm understanding my perspective reminds me that I'm an administrator. I'm a steward of what I have. I'm not the owner. I'm not the generator of riches and wealth. I am, and of margin in my life. But I'm the administrator of what God's doing for me. And that's such a powerful, liberating perspective. And then we moved on. We talked about there's four uses for money. Live, give, owe, grow. Live, give, owe, grow. And then we said, well, owe can really be thought of as taxes, owing taxes, and owing debts, consumer debts, things that I've accumulated and I still am owing money or paying interest on credit cards, things like that. When I have live, give, owe, grow, and owe debts, I need to eliminate those debts, and that's going to give me the capacity to build margin. Building margin is what we're going to talk about today. It's so important to recognize that all of the resources that you have, all the money that's available to you, can be assigned into one of those places. You can write down right now on your budget, create a budget. That's your circle, your budget, your circle is your reality. Your first reality. Here is where my money goes. These are all of my expenses. All of my income, I assign it a part in the circle. Live, give, owe, grow. And then a budget is what I would like my circle to look like. I would like to live, take some money from living, like spend less on hamburgers and coffee, or something that I'm spending money on that I don't need to. I'd like to reduce that so that I can increase my savings, my crecer, my grow. If I want to save more money, then I have to take that money out of some other part of the circle. And so I hope that's making sense. And some people are really grasping that, and other people are having trouble seeing their finances in that reality. But live, give, owe, grow. Those are all of the uses, and every dollar that you spend, every peso that you spend, is going out in one of those ways. And so you can analyze it and understand it by assigning it and realizing, when I buy groceries, is that live, give, owe, or grow? You say, well, I'm growing physically. Well, that's not what we're talking about. Grow financially. So when you buy your groceries, that's living. When you pay your electric bill, that's living. Well, if you want to pay less electricity, that's a great goal. And if you actually do it, then you're reducing the living space in your circle. And now you've created a little bit of margin that you can use to eliminate some debt or grow or do something else. Now, if you're spending more than is even coming in, then every month you're falling further behind. And so that's a problem. So those are the things that we've been looking at, and 5 wise principles that Ron Blue gives us, that if we can begin to understand them, implement them, create habits, put them into practice every day of our life, it's just going to give you power for moving forward. And the first principle, everything else is based on this, is spend less than you earn. Everything else in finance, spend less than you earn. To do that, it's been wisely pointed out in our groups, you have to know how much you earn. You have to know what money is coming in and be very realistic about that. And so then you want to eliminate and avoid debts. You want to give generously. You want to create margin, financial margin, make a plan. How are you going to create some margin and have some long-term goals? And so as we set goals, then we know where we want to move forward. That's our vision. That's our budget. A budget is a visual goal. And so it's creating what we want that circle to look like or live. How much do we want to be able to give? Now, this seems like it's easy for me to talk about, and now it is. But a few years ago, it wasn't. I was the pastor of this church. The community kind of struggled financially, in my opinion, so that we had so many things that weren't taken care of well, in my opinion, that we should be able to do better. We wanted to give more in the community. We wanted to have a greater percentage and have an impact in helping other people, but we just never seemed to have really very much money to do that. And I thought, I'm the leader here. I'm the pastor. I'm the one that, after all these years, should be setting the tone and the culture for our conversation, but we still have anxiety. There are silences, there are conflicts, talking about money and how it should be spent, misunderstandings. And so I was looking around. I said, I am the one that has to make the difference. I have to step up and learn to talk about this and present it. And so how am I going to do that? And I went back in my own life and I said, where did I learn? And I recognized that when I married Lisa 31 years ago, this past week, we celebrated 31 years, we received a book on Ron Blue, Mastering Your Money, written by Ron Blue, called Mastering Your Money. And they gave us some great insight, some wise advice, and combining that with some other people, we made some decisions to adopt. We already had the belief in our heart, but to really affirm the belief that God owns it all. Understanding that our beliefs lead to our behaviors. And so wrong beliefs lead to bad behaviors, and that's a vicious cycle. But if you have a good belief, that can lead you to good behaviors, and then that's a victorious cycle. And so getting that perspective and say, what is really my perspective? And maybe you say, what causes me to be anxious? What causes me to be fearful? What causes me to not want to talk about money? Well, maybe I believe that every time we talk about money, it's going to cause a conflict and that money's not that important. And so I have these beliefs deep down inside me, and that affects my behavior. So I don't talk about it, I don't look at it, I don't analyze it. I believe that it's going to be too confusing or too complex. Or maybe I believe that I already have mastered it. I already know all there is to know. And so those beliefs drive us. And I wanted to come to the belief that God is the owner, I'm the steward. And so Lisa and I agreed on that. And we began to talk about and agree about how we spend our money. One of the pieces of advice that we received that really made a difference for us was to live on one salary. We both had jobs. Lisa's job paid more than mine did, but we chose to live on my salary, a beginner salary, and live very simply, and to use her salary to pay off all our debts, eliminate our debts, and then to be able to give some money to some causes and situations in our church that we wanted to support, and to create some savings, some to that growth part. And so assigning her salary to eliminating debt, giving and growing, and then my salary towards the living. But that really made a difference for us because it changed. We also made a decision that instead of living be the most important, we turned that upside down in our circle. We rotated our circle so that the number one question was, how much would we like to give? Out of the funds that we have, what percentage are we going to give? And we settled on a minimum of 10%. And then we said, how much do we want to save or grow? And we settled on a minimum of 10%. And so that meant giving, 10% was our top priority. Saving, the next 10%, was our second priority. And then living on 80% of our income, whatever that was. And so this is not about how much money you have, it's about the habits, the perspective, the principles, and the priorities that you begin to establish. And as I began to establish those, it began to generate margin. And with that margin, the ability to look forward and establish goals and grow in my habits and to gain some financial wisdom. So that's what we want for you. We want you to be able to pursue contentment and sustainability and discover and experience the joy of giving to others. And so when we talked about one perspective, we talked about the stewardship question, do I really believe God owns it all? The contentment question, do I really believe that what I have is enough? The faith question, do I really believe that I'm demonstrating my faith through my finances? And the wisdom question, do I really believe that God's wisdom is available for me and is trustworthy? And so talking about the uses of money, talking about the 5 wise principles and what those are: spend less than you earn, avoid the use of debt, give generously. I keep repeating these because it's really so important. You have to learn them then to be able to see them in your life and to begin to let them be part of you. When this is part of the way you live every day, it will really revolutionize your life and begin to give you some peace in finances. And so spending less than you earn, avoiding the use of debt, giving generously, making a plan to create and generate margin, and having some long-term goals. And so how do we increase margin? Ron Blue has given us some great tools, and one of them are the 5 steps of sequential investing. And other people maybe use another way of looking at this, but this 5-step process has been very helpful to me. The first step, the bottom step, the worst step that we can be on really, is the struggling step. The struggling person never makes it to the end of the month. They're never quite making it. And maybe it's the reality, but maybe it's just their attitude. Maybe they actually do make it, but if you talk to them, they'll always say, I don't have enough, I can't do that, it's impossible. And so there's a mentality, there's a perspective that it's all on them, and there's a reality that the income really doesn't match what they need to move ahead. And so that's a challenge, and sometimes you need professional help to get out, you need to change your way of thinking. There are a lot of factors there. But the true principle about it all is that no matter whether you have a lot or a little, if you're not making it from month to month, then you need to adjust your budget. You need to adjust your expectations. You need to start spending less than you're earning. There's no other way. Now, we can make the mistake of thinking as people with small resources, apparently small, the appearance of no resources, that are struggling, and the people that apparently have stuff, that they're doing well. But remember, last week we looked at a psalm that said, a proverb that says some people look like they have a lot, but they really don't have anything because they're living large. Big part of their circle is living, but also a big part is debt. And the debt is pushing them behind. And so the inability to make those payments, to get the freedom, to eliminate that, is undermining the freedom and the joy and the peace that they really could be experiencing. And sometimes people who apparently have very little are actually big givers, and they're saving, and they're using their money with other priorities, or they're supporting family members perhaps in another country or in another situation. And so appearances can be deceiving. We should not be comparing ourselves to anyone else. We should be looking at the attitudes of our heart and our own situation. So if we want to progress from struggling and not making it, we need to be spending less than we earn, and we need to be eliminating debts. And those are small debts, it's credit card interest, and I got to get rid of that. And so we move forward, and the next step is surviving. When I'm surviving, I'm making it month to month, but everything is just adjusted to just make it. And I never really have room to get ahead, as we say, or to save up for a big plan. And so I'm surviving, but it's just barely what I need. Now, you can't move from one step to the next in a day or a week or a month. It may take you 5 years of your life to go from struggling to surviving and to moving towards stability. And so you have those goals and you're developing those habits. But if you get those habits ingrained in your life, it's going to make a huge difference over time. And so stability is when you're able to have a month or 3 months or 6 months saved up for emergencies, and you begin to have some insurance for a disability or medical emergency, a plan, some contingency plans, and you're able to do that. Now we learned with COVID how important that is, and perhaps we need a larger contingency plan because we could be out of work for a while. And part of your contingency plan could be moving home or moving in with a different family member, working those things out. But then part of your budgeting becomes you're prioritizing your relationship and understanding with the people that you depend on or who are part of your financial picture. These midterm goals of moving from surviving to being stable towards security that may take you 15, 20 years of your life. The amount of time is not as important as the tendency to move in the right direction, because when we're moving in the right direction, it's because our perspective is clear and our priorities are in place and we're understanding. And as we grow in that understanding, we have peace. And where we are is less important than the peace that we have in our heart and our ability to move towards the goals that we have, that God has given us. So our perspective, our principles, our priorities. Security is when you really are meeting some of your long-term goals. You're able to make that trip, you're able to pay for that schooling or buy an automobile or the different things that you may have. I don't know what they are. Take care of your mom, take care of your family member. There are different things that we could have as long-term goals. So don't compare yourself to someone else. Compare yourself to the peace and contentment that you're looking for, and the circle being the one that you have, where giving is first and growing is second and living is third. And the debts are disappeared. And so what I've learned as we've applied this in the church, we're doing that. This particular year, we set a budget, a minimum budget of what we might be able to do in this time of COVID, but we thought we'd be getting back together. Since we're not getting back together, actually, the income has dropped off. And so that we had thought already for a minimum budget. But because we apply these principles, we adjust our spending so that it is less than our income. So the church is stable, we do less than we wanted, and we have some charts that'll be coming out to you. Have already been coming out to you in your email. So look for that and ask questions about it to understand, because I want to show you the church charts so that you can also be applying the same way in your own life, because that's really what's critical for you to understand and analyze and improve your situation. So there's a few last comments about investing because they're important for us to know. If you can't understand it and in a way that you can explain it to somebody else, it's not a good investment for you. If the primary purpose of an investment is to avoid paying taxes, it's not a good investment for you, because it has to make economic sense. Otherwise, in a couple of years, it won't be working out for you. And so that's just the wisdom of financial advisors over a long time. That's not just John Hamilton talking. That's the wisdom of professionals. You don't borrow money to invest. You don't co-sign with someone to invest. And so you begin to have these things. Investing money is not where you create your capital. It's where you preserve it. And so when you establish the habits and you implement those in your life, that's when you're actually creating the capital. And so that's a key understanding for us to have. Now, 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. If you're looking through the things that we've been teaching, you will find the scriptures talk about all of this over and over and over. This is just great biblical wisdom. And there are many passages, texts from the scripture we could have talked about. But I wanted to give this practical advice because that's also a piece that's missing in our lives. But 1 Peter 4:10 says, "Each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in its various forms. And that's our goal. That's God's plan for your life and for my life, to use, to administer, to steward the gifts that we've received in their various forms. The gifts are God's grace, God's goodness coming not just to us, but through us to be a blessing to many. So as you study these things, as you work on them, I'd love to hear back from you and find out what has been most helpful, what part is helpful, and maybe you have some questions. Maybe you can go on to teach this much more clearly than I've been able to do. And that would be a big blessing to so many. So God bless you, and thank you for your participation.